Welcome, everybody. Welcome to this special one-time episode from start to finish, Certified Solutions Architect Professional. I am Marcus Luga. I am a Senior Technical Instructor at AWS, and I am certified SA Pro as well for the probably third time in my career at this point. And I am joined today by Elsie Alvarez and Ariel Boyd. Elsie.
Hey everyone, thank you for joining this one-day Start to Certified SA Pro series. My name is Elsie Alvarez. I am also SA Pro certified, but unlike Marco, I have not gone through the recertifications. Probably have to do that soon. But I'm a technical lab developer here with AWS. I used to formerly be a trainer, Marco's team, and Dario as well. So with that, I'll pass it over to you, Ario.
What's going on, folks? Thanks so much for the pass, Elsie. Again, like my colleague said, I'm Ariel Boyd, and I'm a technical trainer here at AWS. My day-to-day job here at AWS is I'm a DevOps instructor at the AWS Cloud Institute. I also have the Pro Cert. I'm here in the Pacific Northwest, and I'm so happy to have this session with y'all to learn more about the SA Pro.
Well, thank you, Elsie. Thank you, Ariel. Really, really great to have you here. And before we start, we're going to start with our first on-screen poll. And then we're going to introduce our certification itself. So first question, have you watched the AWS Power Architecting Professional, where you might have seen Elsie, myself, and Jeff Kerwin, one of our other instructors as well, present this whole exam in a longer format? It's a 5-part series. Have you watched it? Answer with 1, 2, or 3. 1, yes. 2, no. And 3 is going to be a maybe. Maybe meaning maybe I watched it, maybe I didn't. You weren't memorable enough, Marco. All right. As those responses come in to chat, I'm going to just talk a little bit about what the professional certification really means. It is essentially a way to prove your knowledge at a level that a professional solutions architect, maybe even a senior solutions architect, a principal solutions architect might need to demonstrate when they're doing their job. Essentially, it is a pretty hefty certification. It is pretty involved as far as the knowledge required and both the focus on the questions. And you will see we will have some demo questions in our exam itself. So if we go to our screen to overview the solutions architect now, the solutions architect exam really helps you showcase your skills at a more advanced level. So typically, when we're talking about our certifications, they're assigned to roles. We start with the foundational tier. We've got the AI and cloud practitioner certifications. Those are really foundational, just meant to show that you understand the concepts. Then the associate ones are showing you have the skills to navigate and operate, architect and develop applications, work with ML, work with data engineering, whereas the professional tier is essentially the top tier. It's the pinnacle of knowledge, and it's showcasing your skill to build complex architectures, solve complex problems at scale, at global scale, for global scale applications that run in multiple regions. And this is our landing page for the certification. Here you will find all the information about the exam itself. We've got the information about the exam. It's 180 minutes, it's 75 questions. So not a lot of time to actually respond to those questions. Really, maybe 2.5 minutes at the best per question. So you really have to be fairly quick. And as we will see from the questions that Elsie, Ario, and myself will show you, some of the questions can be quite lengthy. They can be quite comprehensive use cases or problems that you need to solve. So it is quite a big exam, and it is intensive, very intensive.
Hey, Marco, I
Questions are
got a
multiple.
question for you if I can. So when you took the exam, did you spend the entire time allotted for the exam when you sat and took the exam? I know I did. I took the whole time. Right?
Yeah, yeah. Typically on both the professional and on the specialty ones as well. I find myself maybe having like a 5 minutes to spare at the end, perhaps, but
Same.
it's close. It's close to zero. That time is close to zero. So really, you gotta be ready for sitting for 3 hours before your screen and answering questions, basically.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Two testing options. You can go to a testing center. Any Pearson VUE testing center, really good option. If you want to have a little bit of a notepad to sketch things out, to make some notes, to help you with memorizing some of the things that you've been asked, or maybe put a question mark next to a question with a little bit of recap of why you're not sure about that question. So when you're flagging it and you're going back to that question, you can actually look at it. Or you can do an online proctored exam from your room, but you have to have a clean desk, totally clean desk, no notes, no paper, no pen, no headphones, no phones, no nothing, right? So these are the two options. I like to go to testing centers. I really like to go to testing centers when I can, especially for the pro and the specialty exams. I obviously, if I'm redoing some associate certification, I'm not going to bother. I'm going to not need to really think about all the concepts shown there, but in the pro certification, you got to dive deep. So yeah, these are the basics of the exam. And we're going to put a poll again on screen, and that poll will be, did you register for the SA Pro exam? Have you registered so far? Are you ready to take the exam? Do you have a date set out? 1 will be yes, 2 will be no, and 3 maybe I do, maybe I don't. Haven't checked my calendar lately.
Nice. I see a 1 in the chat. Already registered for the exam. Kudos to you and good luck.
Love it. Lots of twos. Hey, fair enough. You're here learning, right? You're here learning. We're gonna get you better prepared for the exam, for sure. The resources that we're gonna share are gonna get you better prepared. And I know that one of the resources that Elsie would like to show us now is gonna be the exam guide.
Absolutely. Thank you, Marco. When I was a trainer and I had these sessions, and we were even teaching the advanced architecting class, one of the first things I always introduced to everyone was this AWS exam guide. Now, if you haven't heard of this before, every AWS certification does have one of these exam guides. And in here, and you can print it out, it's a PDF. I do this all the time. I print it out and I take notes on it, write down what I know, what I don't know. But what's important here is it will tell you all the exam information, probably to all those questions that you have right now. So if we even scroll down a bit here, it tells us who the target candidate is, maybe someone who has 2 or more years of AWS experience, and what exactly will be in scope and out of scope for the exam. And especially for the services, I know there's over 200, 250 plus services out there. I mean, Ario, Marco, do you know the exact number of services?
I don't want to be wrong. I know
I'm
it's
going
like
to say over 300 at this point. I'm going to say over 300 at this point. That's a statistic coming from somebody else's presentation that I saw, and I'm going to trust that number. Perhaps nobody even knows.
That's true. I mean, new services get released all the time. We have some that are de-emphasized, retired as well. But this exam guide is the perfect one because all the way at the end, which we'll get to eventually, you'll see all the services that are listed to be possibly in scope. So here we go. We see a few of them, and exactly they're broken into domains. So now we can study, which one are we going to be focusing on in the compute section, right? So it's not just EC2, which everyone knows, the EC2 auto scaling, but we also have Fargate, Lambda, of course, but we also have something known as light sail, outpost, wavelength, maybe those you haven't heard of or have had a chance to work with directly before. And then you can see here we have a list of all the services in scope. But if we keep scrolling down, we'll also reach the services that are not in scope for the exam. And so these we don't have to worry about studying because, again, 200, 300 plus services, that can be something that can be a lot, especially for preparing for this exam. So always start out with the exam guide. That's what I recommend. And now if you go back to the top, what I want to take a look at is the domains. This exam is broken into 4 different domains. Other exams may be broken into maybe 5, 6 domains, but take a look at this one. The domains are going to give you a percentage, and that percentage can also help you out when you're trying to determine what should I be studying, maybe primarily. So for example, Marco here has highlighted domain 4, 20%, right? That's a fifth of the exam. But if we take a look at domain 2, that's 29%. We might see more questions that lean towards designing those new solutions. But overall, we want to introduce these 4 domains today, and we do have questions for each of these domains that we want to get to, just to start giving you an experience of what to expect for the exam. Because like Marco and Ario explained, this is a 3-hour exam. These questions are very long. Even the answers can tend to be long. So we need to be prepared, and we do have some strategies into looking at keywords. How can we quickly answer these questions? Because it's going to be a lot. But again, not only do we have domains, we do have those domains broken down even further. So let's take a look at task 1.1 here. The first thing that we're going to look at is network connectivity strategy. So we're talking about how can we create some type of communication, whether it's in one region or we start looking in multiple regions to create that global infrastructure. So commonly foundational networking services that we might know, those are the VPCs, of course, but now we also, if we're talking about multi-region connectivity or global connectivity, this is where we might get into something like Direct Connect. We start using those transit gateways, Route 53, of course. And so this is why I always recommend the exam guide, because it details exactly not only the services that you'll use, but the topics. And the topics are going to be important because if you haven't covered it and you get some questions, no, we don't want to have anything come as a surprise on this exam. So if you haven't looked at the exam guide before, I know Chris is dropping the links into the chat. Thank you so much for that, Chris. And like I said, print it out, take a look, read through it. This is exactly what I use when I prepare for my exams as well. Marco, Ario, anything that you want to include here?
I would say that it's a great call out that you went down and looked at the services on the exam guide that will be on the exam. I love that because I remember when I first started studying, I would get that exam guide and I would look at the domains and that's it, right? But to get at that additional information that you gave, Elsie, is like right on the money on how you can really get the good value of an exam guide. So yeah, I just want to call that out.
And you can also see how broad these topics can be. This is like a mini advanced network specialty exam inside of the pro exam. So as an architect, you're going to have a really broad understanding of services. And if you ever are going for something like advanced networking or advanced security, those exams, the specialty exams, this is like a good stepping stone. Architect Pro is a good stepping stone to the specialties, for sure.
Nice. So I got a question, team. What would you say would be like prerequisite for the SA Pro?
My main one is experience. Experience Will be key. We want you to prove that you have experience with the certification.
Nice.
Number one, whether you've worked on all of these services or just some of these, but you're familiar with the rest, whether you've architected solutions at the global scope or at a local scope, but know how to connect to the global scope, your experience is going to be key.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. And then to add to that, that experience can be, something like watching videos or this live stream right now. It could be doing maybe some practice questions like what we'll cover, or actually even just building experience. When again, going back to training, we had a class called Advanced Architecting. That class is also now available on Skill Builder through digital format. And we also had labs, which Ariel will get a chance to introduce. Those labs also will teach you the building skills, walk you through step by step, introducing, how to build those network strategies that we saw in task 1.1. So building experience, I say, is always very important. Now that I have a few years of AWS experience, I don't normally do the traditional study format now. Mostly I just take it from my building experience. I'm like, oh, I remember that. I did this. I built this project, right? So exactly, if you have a few years of AWS building experience, that can apply perfectly, translate to this exam as well.
I
Yes.
agree. I agree. And I hope that we motivate everybody to actually sign up and register for the SA Pro exam. And if you look at it right now, we're going to put another question on screen. After this session, are you registering for the SA Pro exam? Is this going to be the make or break session? Can we get some number ones in here if you're not already registered, of course? Are you going to register for the SA Pro exam? Ones or threes? I hope I don't
Okay.
see any no's.
I
I
think I'm
really
gonna
hope I
have
don't
to.
see any no's.
Oh, nice.
Fair
I think
enough.
I'm gonna be
Maybe
the
is a good
one
response. Yeah.
jumping into this because I also need to recertify my SA Pro exam. So I'll definitely be registering after this.
Absolutely, absolutely. No, that was a great call out, team. Like having that experience is going to be awesome, right? Um, what exams would you say would be prerequisite as well? Like what other certifications would you want to call out before you would take the SA Pro?
So, just to jump in here quick, and then maybe Marco, you have some thoughts as well. Traditionally, of course, the solutions architect associate can contribute to some knowledge before you take the SA Pro. But even I would say the if you're just starting out, completely new to the cloud practitioner can be a precursor to that SA associate exam. I'd say a lot of the material, foundational, introductory information about the services, EC2, VPCs, that is available on the cloud practitioner as well. So if you're still newer to the cloud and don't have a lot of building experience, maybe cloud practitioner be your first step. And then once you have spent a little bit of time, built out some projects, there's a lot of tutorials available in the AWS documentation and skill builder. We move on to the solutions architect associate. And then once you feel comfortable with that material, you're strong enough, and then you move on to the SA Pro.
Nice.
And more than any certification, I would say the learning plans where you get both a theory and then some labs and some knowledge are the key. Ario, tell us a little bit about these learning plans.
I sure will. And man, what a perfect segue from the examples that you all set out. Getting the experience through building, as well as looking at some of those earlier certifications as a way to kind of prep. When you look at the learning plans, especially the one that we're looking at right now, AWS Solutions Architect Learning Plan that include labs. If you were to go through this outline, what you will find is that some of these courses start with cloud essentials, right? Elsie just talked about, hey, you know what? Maybe you don't have a whole lot of experience, but you want to start that journey for the SA Pro, right? You'll have an opportunity to start at a good starting point, getting those essentials and then building on that foundation. So I always encourage folks to get practice in. And how do you get practice? How do you know? You got to find somebody who's already been down that path. And I also love this cloud computing essentials portion here because everybody's a different learner, right? And I know I am, right? You can tell me something all day, you can talk to me, I'll receive it, sometimes with just a grain of salt. I have to put my hands on it. And if it's fun, it's even greater. So check out the course that's on the screen right now, AWS Simulearn. If you haven't had an experience with AWS Simulearn, it's like this gamified way that you can interact with artificial intelligence, and a storyline gives you a nice plot, well, really a use case around your studying, right? So there are 36 trainings on this thing, but that's okay. Don't get overwhelmed I mean, you need to set aside a plan for yourself to kind of get through the trainings that are important for you. You need to set a timeline for all of these 36 trainings, right? So it's not necessarily a call out for you to say, hey, make sure you get every single one of these particular courses done, but at least you do have a pack of courses that you can go through to start to build, right? Fundamentals on security. As you look through the exam guide, what you will find is that networking is covered, right? And then security is also another big topic. So isn't it nice that you do have these courses that cover a lot of that exam guide? And I know there's more as far as that, that we can jump into as far as what you can search for on Skill Builder, what you can jump into on Skill Builder. So if you can, Marco, hit that next tab for me. I think it's going to be really important that we consider the exam prep plan. Now, what you saw previous to this was saying, hey, somebody might be starting from ground zero and they need those essentials. They need to go into those fundamentals. And then there are some more advanced courses on that first tab that we just looked at. But now this link is the exam prep plan. This is one of the most official ways in which you can kind of start your journey from zero to finish, right? Looking at good ways in which you can kind of jump into it. So there's 19 trainings here. Once you first jump into the exam prep plan, you get notified. You get more information about what the exam offers, kind of what Elsie went through. What I also like about the exam prep plan is it tells you how to go through these courses, but not only that, what's involved in the courses, and then it also involves the breakdown per domain. As you see right here, domain 1 and domain 2. I like that. And it also comes with practice questions if you ever jumped in it. I've jumped in it before and I was elated. I was happy to see, oh, we get some exam covered topics and then a few of those practice questions that are related to the exam or to the domain, because that's a good way to kind of size yourself up per domain to see if you're ready. I know after you take that exam, you're going to get a score back and it's going to give you a nice scorecard to say, hey, domain 1, you had some trouble in, but domain 3, you were A-okay. With that being said, I can go back to this learning plan and say, all right, I did have trouble with domain 1 if I didn't pass the first time. I can jump right into this course that highlights what I need to know around domain 1. So get more practice in by getting the right roadmap, if you will, going for the exam prep plan. All right, Marco, I think this is time to hit that next tab. And what we hit on this tab is just all of the architected courses. So there's a few flavors that we're giving you here. One way is to look at learning labs mixed with courses. Another way is to hit that exam prep plan, or you can go right into Skill Builder. And folks, there are a lot of filters when you're searching through Skill Builder. My favorite way to search for architected courses is to come to the search bar and just hit enter, right? But you know what? Before I hit enter, I'm going to use those filters to hit a drop down to talk about architected courses, right? And if you hit that filter, hit the search bar, it's going to populate in this way where you can see every course that you can jump into in Skill Builder that deals with architecting. You're going to catch some of those essential courses here. You're going to catch some of those fundamental courses here, but then you also get what you need as far as the SA Pro, because there are going to be some more advanced courses here as well. Right. So it's awesome for you to just kind of play around with the tool around the exam itself. Right. Marco, let's go ahead and hit that next tab. I think it's pretty important for us to kind of understand what we can do as far as labs. And don't you like a playlist? I love a playlist, right? Just keep things coming my way, right? And there's a lot of labs here as well. This playlist, what it'll do for you is it'll let you get some hands-on training, right? In a way that is going to help you around the different concepts around the exam. I mean, yeah, you've probably been through KMS before, like you saw that first training up there, right? And we highlighted the fact that one of those trainings early on in the link before said that you need to get right next up against security. Well, I'm going to go to the lab playlist because the lab playlist is going to give me some hands-on practice around security. Now I can dive a little bit deeper into KMS. If you started your SA Pro journey like me, you probably started off with the SA Associate, you got some building practice, and then you jumped into the SA Pro. So take this opportunity to look at architected courses on how you can dive deeper into these concepts, working with elastic load balancers as we're passing through, working with DynamoDB databases. If you do have that SA Associate experience, what you will find is that with the SA Associate, I need to just understand how these services work together. But if I jump into this hands-on practice, what I get to do now is I get to dive a little bit deeper to see how programmatic I can be around these services, around DynamoDB, right? Or any other service that's being highlighted right now. But it doesn't just offer you one side of the game. And that's what I like about it. I know that Marco is going through the courses. And if you had an opportunity to kind of scan through as Marco is scanning through here, you'll definitely see that it's covering a lot of different ground, right? So I always like to say, I got to call my own bluff. I shouldn't have any excuse, right? If I got a Skill Builder subscription, and you do need to subscribe to these courses, a lot of these, but if I do have a Skill Builder subscription, I can call my own bluff to say, you know what, there is more practice that I can put in, right? So I know, Marco, there is another tab that we can speak on here. And this is the advanced architecting playlist, right? And don't you like anything that's supplemental? All that is saying is, yeah, we got some great content, but the content doesn't end, right? We can supplement even additional things. Look at these concepts. Like when I walk into the AWS associate exam, I need to know a little bit about compute units. I need to know a little bit about streaming, but I need to know even more about IoT, right? Right. I need to know what I can do with streaming around these Internet of Thing devices out there. So now I got an opportunity to dive deeper. The associate level of the exam talks about the database migration services, but how can I be more programmatic when I am transferring that data in the best way that I need to set up a new environment for my databases, right? Whether I'm coming from on premises into the cloud, now I got some hands-on practice to actually get involved with that, right? Not just reading use cases and going through practice exam questions and trying to right size myself with the exam that way, but actually getting the experience I need is what we want to do here. And by the way, folks, if you saw EKS on the associate exam, get ready to dive deeper into EKS for the SA Pro. It's going to be on the exam. I remember going for the associate and crossing my fingers thinking like, maybe there'll just be a small number of EKS questions on this one, right? But I prepped myself up well enough when I took the Pro to expect more questions around EKS. And that's exactly what I got. And so you got the resources. You can dive into EKS and learn a lot more about it. Fargate, as you see, is highlighted. Web apps using DynamoDB. I'm just so happy by the fact that there's so many resources. So again, I get to call my own bluff. If I don't know about something, it's right here. It's right there in Skill Builder. I just got to go and do a good search. So basically what we went through so far around these courses is, hey, you do have courses, right? There's ways that you can get involved in some early essential courses. There's ways in which you can get involved in fundamental. And then we showed you some supplemental labs to take you to more advanced courses, but also with labs. And what I truly, truly like about a good study plan is that you get to set up that study plan to cover all areas. I get courses, and that's fine. That's great. I get to listen at you, tell me more about the subject matter. I get to read through that thing, get to learn more about it that way. I also get to put hands-on practice with those labs that Skill Builder will offer. But I don't stop there, right? I got a 3-way study plan. Course material, 33%, let's say. Labs, 33%. And then that final 33%, I'm going to spend time with the official practice exam, right? Not only do I need to understand about use cases, but I need to know how they're going to be asked on the exam. And this is my thing. I don't know if everybody does it this way, but if I go through a practice exam and I don't get at least a 75%, I know I'm not ready, right? I'm going to take that practice exam again. And the good thing about this practice exam is that after you take that exam, you get to filter per domain. You get to say, all right, let me look at all of my domain 3 questions. Let me look at all of those incorrect questions. And when you take the practice exam, it's going to give you the question, give you the right answer, give you the wrong answer, and the explanations why they are right and wrong. So now I can go back to what Elsie showed you. I can say, oh, you know what? There's an exam guide, right? I got this wrong, but how do I study more about this? I go to the exam guide, I find those task statements, I find the skills in portion of the exam guide, and then I dive a little bit deeper. I go back to my documentation. I go back into Skill Builder. I go back into the courses. I go back into the labs. And so that's my study plan, folks. Make sure that you definitely grab some e-learning courses on Skill Builder, right? From every level. Brush up on the essentials, get your fundamentals right, dive into the more advanced concepts through a course, then jump into some hands-on practice, just jumping into one of these builder labs that we have in Skill Builder. And then again, right size yourself with one of these practice exams. It's going to take you a long way. This strategy works for me. I don't know, Elsie, Marco, is that the way that you tackle exams, right? If you're in the shoes of the learners that are on the stream right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wanted to also respond to one of the comments in the chat. A question: do the labs during these trainings on Skill Builder incur cost on our AWS accounts? So yeah, let's clear that up. There are labs on Skill Builder that are free, of course, no charge at all. And then there are labs, of course, you'll see those labeled with a subscription. These you can see are free, but here, the ones with subscription, you will only get access to them if you have that Skill Builder subscription. So that is paid monthly or annually. But these labs do not incur cost on your personal AWS account because they actually give you a Skill Builder AWS account. So don't worry about any additional charges coming through your account. These are not going to incur cost on your personal accounts.
For sure. All of the labs, all of the Simulern, all of the CloudQuest accounts that are built, they're built from the ground up from Skill Builder. There's no account connected to your AWS account. And I personally really love the Simulerns. The Simulerns, these are really cool. Some of them are free as well. Simulerns will put you in a scenario where you're talking to the customer and you're trying to solve a problem. Then you learn how to build a solution. And then at the end, there's a DIY where you create part of that solution on your own as a challenge at the end. And that actually proves that not only have you gone through the labs, but you understand the concepts and you understand how to do that DIY portion. You understand how to fix that issue or add some additional capability to the application, which if you go to my Skill Builder profile, you'll see that I mostly have completions on Simulerns and very few completions on labs. Yeah, because I really prefer that concept. But again, to each their own, right? We've got all kinds of different content on Skill Builder. However, off Skill Builder, we do have some additional content where we can dive deeper. And we're going to start with the AWS Architecture Center. AWS Architecture Center is where we can get information about architectures. We're now a professional architect. We need to start reading white papers. We need to start reading documentation. And of course, on this page, what we can do is we can take a look at a lot of different content, over 2,500 different types of solutions. You can search by service. You can search by different types of designs. And then this kind of guidance will be for a specific solution. Here, I've got guidance for a hybrid architecture using ECS Anywhere with cross-region load balancing. So something global, something cross-regional, load balanced across multiple regions can be pretty complicated. There's an overview what this solution does, how enterprises can leverage the proposed code in this solution, the proposed infrastructure components that we're going to get. It gives you a good overview of what capabilities this offers, like disaster recovery, optimized infrastructure costs. It gives you the architecture diagram. You can download it. And then, of course, you also can just deploy this. When you click Go to Sample Code, it will simply bring you into the sample code for this specific guidance. And that's the real beauty of the Architecture Center. You can find all kinds of different solutions for diving deep into things like multi-region architectures, hybrid architectures, and all kinds of different architectural scenarios. And then on the other hand, we also have some really good guidance with the AWS white papers. So AWS white papers allow you to really dive deep into specific concepts, specific decisions, specific technical guides and reference material, reference architecture diagrams of solutions that have actually been put into place, put into action. There's different types of solutions that are sort of best practices coming out of the well-architected principles. And then there's also solutions that were implemented at specific customers. So you can go and look in all kinds of different solutions. There's 139 different white papers. They're pretty comprehensive. And each of these will then lead you into some kind of white paper. So for example, this one is multiple accounts, how to set up your account for, how to set up your environment for multiple accounts. It'll tell you about the well-architected framework. It'll tell you, hey, before we get started, you got to get well-architected. It's going to lead you through an introduction. And then it dives deep into all the concepts, all the organizational units, all the advanced organizational units you can build in, how Control Tower can help you establish multi-account environment. And this is like a really deep dive document. This is something that you as a professional architect are probably almost required, but highly recommended at least. It's highly recommended reading for anybody to just dive really deep into these concepts. I got another one here. This is one of my favorite ones, Choosing Security, Identity, and Governance Services. It gives you an overview of all the services. It gives you a good introduction on cloud security, cloud identity, and cloud governance, how they tie together to build a comprehensive security sort of program and design. It gives you a deep dive on all of these services and how they come together. It talks about how to establish different types of identity services, how to set up your network components, network detection, AWS governance and compliance. So really, really deep document that goes and dives into those advanced concepts that as a professional architect, as a senior architect at your company, maybe as a principal architect for your team, you will be the one that will be answering these questions. So bookmark the links that we're giving to you here in chat. Those are your core links. Things like reference architectures in the Architecture Center, the white papers, definitely very valuable. Now, I'm not asking you to memorize any of this. I'm not asking you to memorize any of this because it's impossible. We barely know how many services AWS has. Nobody's asking you to memorize this. This is a resource for what we call just-in-time learning, right? In your career, you're going to go through a lot of scenarios where you're not going to be 100% confident in what you're building because there's over 300 services there, and you might not know of the best service. So just-in-time learning is a way to expand your knowledge in time for the solution to be built, to brush up on a concept that you might have not heard about lately, you might have not worked with lately. So this is a really, really great resource. And then finally, as a solutions architect, one really important thing to note is that you will need to be very proficient in cost management. So I really love using the Cost Optimization Cloud Financial Management Guide. This one is essentially a guide how to reduce your cloud costs, how to go serverless, pay for what you use, to right-size workloads so that they're both performant and responsive, but also don't waste any resources idling there. And then, of course, how to build a modern architecture, how to build serverless, how to utilize the right types of services for the right types of benefit. And I truly, truly recommend reading the ebook. The link to the ebook is right here. I've got it open. So Cloud Financial Management Guide, written by Bowen Wang. It's a really deep dive into cloud financial management. It prefaces where this Cloud Financial Manager came from. It's based on some Gartner research paper. It's based on different types of design in traditional IT and how those change when you go into the cloud. So a really long deep dive with a lot of information about what things are, how to use cost reporting services, how to run and control billing, how to plan for usage in the future, because part of running in the cloud is also having a good idea of how much is it going to cost me in 6 months, and plan for that usage and plan to optimize, plan to stay under the curve that you're predicting. That's the core idea. How to save costs, how to optimize. So lots of information about also how to achieve better performance while saving costs, how to deliver better business value. This is the kind of white paper that you as a professional architect, or even your leader, your management, the C-level should be reading. These are really, really important things to read. What do you think, Elsie? What do you think, Ariel? What's your opinion on the advanced resources that I've shown?
Oh, I'll just quickly comment this and then Ariel can go. Absolutely, Marco. These are tools that you're not going to just be referencing for the exam, just for general knowledge, right? If you want to be an SA, if you want to be a builder in the cloud, and you're working with customers, you're going to be continuously learning. Services change all the time, new features come out, and especially, someone has to pay for this. No one is going to give you open-ended account to just spend money freely. So we want to be able to work with customers and meet their concerns, whether it's about security, whether it's about having some type of redundancy in case there's an outage, whether it's reducing their bill at the end of the month. And so these are just bookmarks for you, not for the exam, but in general, if you want to be serious about having a career in the cloud, building and servicing customers, assisting them. These are absolutely materials that we share and reference. I use the documentation all the time. I'm constantly using some type of resource, whether it's something security related, something breaks, you have to go see what changed. Ario, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, absolutely. I love what you went through, Marco. And one of the big things that popped out at me was the architectural diagrams, right? As you're preparing for this particular examination, you're going to go through the course material, you're going to see those labs, but to have that visual picture that's based on a real use case that's industry related really helps out a whole lot. So the Architecture Center that you highlighted, super, super awesome. It really helped me, right? When I was able to go to sites like Prescriptive Guidance for the Architecture Center to be able to say, oh, this is how it's plugged in, right? Gives me that visual picture in my mind. I can take that back to whatever I'm studying. And also, you know, cost is going to be a big deal, right? And at this level, it's going to be a deep dive into costs. It's probably one of the greatest factors for folks coming over into the cloud, right? So I love the fact that you gave that cloud financial management document. Folks dig into that, understand how you could get your best return on your investment. And I think if you start to understand that as a concept, rather than only saving costs, because saving costs is a big deal on the exam for sure, but being able to kind of get the best bang for your buck, right, is a lot of what we try to do as an architect. And so going into that, seeing what you need to do, seeing how those meetings are set up, seeing how you get the watch cost, set up that billing, set up experimentation, right, through certain services that you'll start to find are going to be golden. So, man, this is great resources, Marco, for sure.
All right. Perfect. Thank you both for commenting. Yeah, and I agree. It's the business value, getting the business value out of cloud is an important factor, and a good architecture, a well-architected application, an application that's designed to be both performant, reliable, and resilient, but also cost-effective is key, is definitely key here. All right. Now we are in our second half where we are going to talk about the questions. We're going to do some questions for all of our domains. And we're going to start with domain one. Domain one is going to be our design solutions for organizational complexity. It's a quarter of the exam. Quarter of the exam are going to talk about organizational complexity. These are architectures like I've shown you, and that hybrid EKS anywhere across multiple regions, and how do we load balance that? That is exactly the type of questions that you can expect. So that's why we showed those as examples. So let's dive deep, everybody, and see what the first question has for us. A company migrates all its applications to AWS in US East 1 region. In AWS organizations, the company adds a development account with 2 VPCs that the company attaches to a transit. The company also adds a production account with another VPC. Which combination of steps would the company take to attach the production VPC to the transit gateway? And this is a select 3. Oh, select 3. These are the ones that I flag always. If I see select 3, select 2, I just flag them and leave them for the end. I'm going to go and I'm going to go through all the questions, answer the simple ones, quote unquote, and then I'm going to go and focus on these select 3 ones. But let's say we're at the end. I got the flagged question. Let's see what the responses, possible responses are. Again, remember, select 3. A, use the organization's management account to activate resource sharing. B, use an IAM policy in the development account to share the transit gateway with the production account. C, use an AWS identity and access management in the production account to share the production VPC with the development account. D, use AWS Resource Access Manager, AWS RAM, to share the transit gateway with the production account. E, use the AWS Resource Access Manager, AWS RAM, to share the production VPC with the development account. And F, attach the VPC in the production account to the transit gateway. Ooh, that is a long one. It took me 2.5 minutes just to read through the question. So I'm out of time now. I'm in the exam, I'm out of time. This is why I flagged these long questions. Select 2, select 3. I flag them. I leave them for the end. If I see a question that's got 3 lines of intro for the actual question and then 4 really short answers, I'm going to focus on that one right away. But this kind would go in the end. But these are official practice exam questions, yes. So this is exactly what you could see in an exam. And we need 3 responses. 3 responses. Craig, right there with a shooting that like out of a cannon. First one. Another Emmanuel there. Sandro as well. ADF. We have BCF as well as an option. ADF. I'll let everybody answer. I'll let everybody respond as much as we can before I reveal the actual answers. However, based on the responses in chat, I see that everybody's pretty familiar with the Resource Access Manager here and how to set this up. Yes, resource sharing. We are going to use Resource Access Manager to share something within our organization. ADF are the correct responses. So we need to activate resource sharing before we can use Resource Manager, and that's going to be in the management account in the organizations. Then we are going to look at the Resource Access Manager, and we're going to take the transit gateway and share it with our production account, right? We want to share it with our production account, and then we attach that production account to the transit gateway. Even if an account that is spun up that resource is not in the same account, when we're in an organization, we can use the Resource Access Manager to share that resource across all of the other accounts. And that would be the correct one here. So as we said, they add a development account with 2 VPCs that attach to the transit gateway. So using Resource Access Manager to share the production VPC with the development account would be incorrect. We cannot share a VPC, but we can share a service like the transit gateway. And obviously the development account already has access to the transit gateway as for the scenario. There's no IAM policy to share the transit gateway. We actually need to use Resource Access Manager to do that. And of course, this one to share the VPC through IAM with the development account, that's not a capability as well. So the right way to do this is through Resource Access Manager ADF. Congratulations to everybody who got ADF. All right, let's jump into question number 2. And Elsie, do you want to go and jump into question number 2?
Yeah, of course. Let's take a look at question number 2. This is a company suspects that one of the Amazon EC2 instances that hosts the company's application has been the target of a sophisticated network attack. To investigate the suspected attack, the network administrator needs to inspect the network traffic message content. A solutions architect needs to recommend a solution that will monitor and capture the relevant traffic. Which solution will meet these requirements? Now, again, I like these questions because they do simulate real world scenarios that you absolutely would encounter with maybe a customer. Cyber attacks, we've seen these commonly, even to this day. And even large corporations can be impacted, small, any industries. So let's see how we would respond to this. I probably see some answers coming in before we even get to the actual ones, VPC flow logs. So let's take a look. Option A says configure those VPC flow logs to monitor the elastic network interface of the affected EC2 instance. Okay. And then you can configure your Amazon S3 bucket as the target, analyze the flow logs that are stored in the target S3 bucket. All right. I mean, I can see option A being, it's VPC flow logs, of course, can capture that network traffic. But one thing to keep in mind is that the question does highlight it wants to read the message content. Now, I'll propose this question to you. Can VPC flow logs capture the message content, or is there some other type of information that it's capturing? And this is again why it's important to either review the documentation to see the limitation of those flow logs, or again, we did have a lab in the architecting class that gave you a chance to work with the VPC flow logs and you would see if the message content was collected. So for A, I'm gonna just go ahead and cross that off. I know now that VPC flow logs do not give you access to that. So we'll need to use something else. And with that, we can get rid of option C because VPC flow logs again are here. So let's take a look at B and D. Configure the traffic mirroring with the elastic network interface of the affected EC2 instance as the source and another EC2 instance network as the target. Analyze the data that traffic mirroring captures. Another thing that we talked about in that architecting course is traffic mirroring, which, just like the name says or suggests, it will allow you to copy that traffic so we can send it to another destination and then we can do whatever we want to that traffic, because you don't necessarily want to affect the original source, right? You might need access to the original information later on. Okay, I like this one, but let's take a look at option D. Configure Amazon Inspector to monitor the EC2 instance, install the inspector agent on the instance, run the assessment, and then use the inspector console to view the findings. Now, again, we want to know the limitations of these services. Inspector is one of those security services that we can use to identify some maybe security vulnerabilities. Maybe we have outdated software on that, but it also analyzes the network, that the VPC, the network traffic that flows and connects to that EC2 instance. But again, we're not able to necessarily capture the content that is what we're looking for originally in the question itself. And so with that, I'm going to eliminate option D as well. And so that just leaves us with option B. We're going to use traffic mirroring to create a copy, send it off to another network interface, another EC2, where we can analyze that data in more detail. We might even have anything third party installed to give us a little bit more information into that. Marco, Ariel, anything you want to add here?
Yeah, I want to add that Alexander there in chat said, "Can I phone a friend?" Sorry, you're not on a quiz. You're not going to be able to phone anybody or talk to anybody. And if you do, if you're doing the exam online, make sure to lock your room. You cannot talk to anybody. If you talk to somebody, even if sometimes there's a sneeze from the other room, you are going to be really warned about this on the exam. And if it repeats, then they're going to invalidate your exam. So a really, really important thing to know as well. And for this question, I might actually flag it. I'm kind of in between whether I would flag this one or not. It's got two responses with VPC flow logs, so it kind of draws me to try to answer with VPC flow logs. So you really gotta read the stem, the portion of the question that gives you all the information, and really got to detect this one, traffic message content, right? That's the key to answering this one correctly, in my opinion. Ariel, what do you think?
I think it was a great explanation. I don't really have anything to add. Elsie, I think it was a great breakdown of why you would go for traffic mirroring versus VPC flow logs. But again, like Marco is saying, you got to get next to the services to be able to kind of differentiate, right? Yep.
All right, Ariel, let's do question 3.
All right.
Take it away.
Let's do it, folks. So let's take this one easy. This is probably one of those ones you would flag, Marco, because it's so long, right? But a company has many resources in a single AWS region. The resource include, this is the important part, EBS, DynamoDB tables, right? So I got EBS volumes and DynamoDB tables. The company plans to add additional AWS resource types to its backup plans in the future. The company tags resources with one of three tags: production, dev, test. A system administrator manually backs up the various resources and stores them in the same region. The company requires the system administrator to back up dev and test resources daily. The system admin must back up production resources twice a day. The company needs to automate the backups, store the production backups in a second region. Which solution meets these requirements? Here it is, with the least operational effort.
Oh yeah, I'm flagging this one for sure.
Yeah. Now that we're reading not only the question, we have the answer choices, and it's like, oh, there's so much here. So I want y'all to read that through, but I know that this is a lot, so I'll kind of take the approach that Elsie took. Like, let's highlight what I need to know from this question, right? First of all, reading the answers, if I go for answer choice A, it says create 2 data lifecycle manager policies. Okay, so let's talk about using the data lifecycle manager. Can I go for the resources that are mentioned in the question with data lifecycle manager? So this is your opportunity to get next to the resource and learn more about it. Now, if this was EBS, yeah, absolutely. I'll have an opportunity to kind of get that done. But the fact that it mentions that we also need to back up DynamoDB, it does kind of rule things out a little bit here as far as data lifecycle manager. And just like the last question with VPC flow logs mentioned twice, we have data lifecycle manager mentioned twice. With that being said, process of elimination, I don't know about you folks in the chat, but I'm just going to look at A and find data lifecycle manager and say, oh, there's no need for that, right? I'm going to look at answer choice B and I'm going to say, I ain't going to worry about data lifecycle manager. And then I got 2 more here, right? And these 2 are, in relation. They both include AWS backup, which is probably a better solution here. But we also have to match what the question is asking us for. So let's look at what the answer choices say. Like if I read answer choice C, it says create 2 backup plans in AWS backup. Configure the first plan to include all supported resources that have the production tag. Run the first backup every 12 hours. That's cool. That's twice a day, right? Store these backups in a backup vault in the second region. Configure the second backup plan to include all supported resources that have the dev or test tag. Run the second backup plan daily. Store these backups in the default backup vault. Now, let me help you expedite this next one real quick. Almost the same. Answer choice D is almost the same. The difference with answer choice D, though, is that it has production and test and dev swapped from answer C. Right? We're storing, if we read answer C, we're storing the production backups in the second region. But we don't do that in answer choice D. So for production, I do want to make sure that I do have my backups in another location. Right? So just like the answer chat right now, everybody's chiming in. A lot of folks are chiming in with answer choice C. I'm going to side with answer choice C as well for that particular reason. Right? So that's my answer.
Perfect, Ariel. Exactly. Yeah. The key questions here are key sort of keywords. Well, man, that was hard to get off my tongue. Keywords here are second region. The prod needs to be in a second region, right? Store these backup vaults in a second region. And it says that we want to back up twice a day for prod and once a day for the other 2, right? So anything that's got a prod tag, run the backup plan 12 hours, store in the second region, and the rest is just include the other resources to back them up daily. Yeah, that's the keywords here. And if you find those keywords, easy peasy to answer this question. Easy. Right, Elsie?
Yeah, I mean, and just commenting from the chat, I know a lot of people are saying, it's taking me 5 minutes to read this question, get through this question. This is another test taking tip. Know the scope of your services. If it's only available in the AZ, in the region, it's global service. This is how you can easily eliminate, like Aereo did, the data lifecycle manager. We can't do multi-region. So quickly eliminate those. Don't even look at them. And something about this exam, it's very into multi-region and multi-account configurations. So if you're not used to that, if you haven't covered that or taken any exams that covered this material, no multi-account, multi-region setups. Definitely go into organizations. Anybody can set up an organization, even if you only have one account. So look into that.
100%. All right, let's go to domain 2. This one, 29%, almost a third of the question is going to be design new solutions. And then there's also domain 4, which is modernize, migrate and modernize. And part of modernize is designing new solutions. So you kind of will see that the domain questions might be very similar here. Building new stuff, right? That's what we can call it. So let's do question number 4. And here we're going to see a company hosting a website behind CloudFront on 2 Origin servers. The company has deployed a new application version on one of the Origin servers to beta test some new features. The company wants to automatically direct a small percentage of the new sessions that connect through the CloudFront distribution to the new application version. The company does not want to direct customers who are currently running workloads to the original application. Do not want to do have in the new application version. Those customers should have the ability to finish their operations with the original application. So any new test customers, a small portion is going to go to the new one, and the rest of them, we want to keep them running on the old one. Which solution will meet these requirements with the least operational effort? All right, and reveal the responses. Oh my gosh, I'm flagging this one again. Think about now what it is asking us to do. We've got a CloudFront distribution. We got 2 Origin servers, 2 targets. What capability of CloudFront is going to allow me to actually distribute traffic based on the application version, based on what I have running in the application version itself? Well, there's really no inherent capability of CloudFront that will allow us to direct traffic to different, we would call them different targets, different perhaps target groups. If I had an application load balancer, I could do that. With the application load balancer, I could do basically a distribution with 2 target groups and just use the features of the application load balancer. However, CloudFront doesn't have that. So what I need is a little bit of code, a little bit of programmatic capability to help me direct the traffic from CloudFront. So what I see is 2 responses with Lambda at Edge. Lambda at Edge are functions that I can run right on top of CloudFront that give me some code execution capability inside of the actual content delivery network. So these to me look very enticing, but I'm going to read the 2 that don't mention Lambda at Edge just to see if there's anything that is reasonably usable there. Starting with B, update the homepage code of the website to allow customers to select either the new application version or the original application. Sorry, that's not what we wanted. We wanted to just feed some new customers onto the new version, and I'm going to eliminate B with that because I don't want to give customers choice which version they pick. C would be create a second CloudFront distribution on the Origin server that hosts a new application version, create a Route 53 weighted routing policy to distribute connections to 2 CloudFront distributions, configure traffic to the appropriate CloudFront distribution by using the DNS information. Now, technically, this could be doable, but if I just use Route 53 weighted routing, I'm going to miss the requirement that the customer should have the ability to finish their operation with the original application. Because as soon as the DNS refreshes, they might be directed to the new application, not the old one. So I'm going to eliminate B and C here. Feasible, but not what the question is actually asking. And then I have A and D, create a new Lambda Edge function to examine incoming requests that inspect cookies to determine whether a session is new. Now this is the correct answer already revealed, but this is a very enticing solution. For a new session, configure the function to rewrite the URL for a small percentage of sessions to display the new application version. For a session that is in progress, configure the function to set the origin based on the value of the session cookie. This achieves exactly what we want. And then D says, publish 2 new Lambda at Edge functions to automatically direct requests. That wouldn't make any sense. 2 new Lambda at Edge functions wouldn't be a solution. Wouldn't be a solution because they wouldn't know about each other. You can have multiple Lambda at Edge functions to do multiple things, but not to concurrently inspect traffic. So you need to have one Lambda at Edge that concurrently inspects traffic and rewrites the actual URL for those users that need to go into that specific new version of the application. So A is the correct one here. That's my reasoning. What do you think, Ariel? What do you think, Elsie?
I want to say it's a misconception when you see least operational effort and you read an answer choice that is longer, that it's going to be more operations happening, right? And this is proof of that, right? You got a longer answer for answer A than D, but yet if you read D, it's doing more than what you would do in answer A. So make sure that you don't use that as an indicator of saying, oh, this must be least operational because there's more text, right? Or there's less text.
Yeah, I agree. And then even just highlighting some of Craig Wilkinson's comments, B is high effort. It's requiring a manual choice of the users, or option D requires 2 functions. These keywords in the questions will allow you to be able to eliminate some of these options quickly. They may not always be obvious, but if you see anything that's manual, that adds overhead. We want to go towards automated or maybe some managed services if we want to reduce some of that complexity. In this case, we ended up using the functions just because maybe something like option C, adding another CloudFront distribution, is an additional overhead, and then that Route 53, another service on top of that as well. So keep those things in mind.
Good points there, Elsie. Really good points. So take us into question 5.
All right. Looks like a slightly short question. Let's see. A company stores a large amount of data in an S3 bucket that has versioning enabled, but an audit finds that the company needs to replicate all this existing and new data into another region to ensure business continuity. This company creates a second S3 bucket in another region. Again, all these multi-region stuff. Which solution will meet this requirement with the most, this time they highlighted most, operational efficiency? All right, cool. I like this. Easy S3, straightforward. We're familiar with that. Let's see what some of the answer options look like. Okay, there we go. Okay, so one of the features, if you haven't used AWS S3 inventory, is that it will actually give you, like an inventory, a list of what's in the bucket. So here we're going to use that to tell us what is in the original bucket. And then we're going to use that inventory to replicate into a second bucket by using another feature called S3 batch operations. Now, this is interesting. Should I pick this option? I mean, I'm using S3 inventory, generating a list, and then I have to use that list to go and do something. Seems a little bit manual in a way. Let's hold off on this one for now. And let's take a look at option B. It says to enable versioning, another S3 feature, in the second bucket, and set up a replication configuration to replicate all the objects in the original bucket into the S3 bucket. Use the replication time control to configure replication. So a lot of S3 features. Again, if you haven't used these before, I highly recommend at least to try them out or read the documentation. I'm going to hold off on using this option B here because, again, we're looking at the original objects. What is going to that mean for like the newer objects or this time control that we're going to set? What is the time period for that? So maybe this is not the best one for me. So with that, let's take a look at option C, Athena, yet another service. Now we're bringing some additional complexity. Now I have another service to talk about. And we're going to use that to create an inventory in the first bucket and then use that inventory to replicate objects using batch operations. Very similar to option A. But why would I use another service when I know S3 itself has a feature that can help me create that inventory? Also, Athena itself, we're running queries, is more of a service that allows us to, run something in SQL to allow us to analyze data, be able to crawl through that information very quickly. More on the data analytics side, not necessarily what we're looking for right now, which is just, replicating objects in another region. So definitely I'm going to cross out option C. I don't even need to consider that any further. And then finally, option D, we need batch replication to replicate the existing objects in the original bucket to the second S3 bucket. And when that finishes, replicate all objects in the first S3 bucket into the second S3 bucket. Now, again, this is a feature that we can use to replicate objects into another S3 bucket, whether that's something that's in a different region, second bucket. And I think this is going to be for us the best solution overall, just based on the elimination of the previous options. And in this case, again, you can see we're only using one service, one feature. We're not going to rely on any manual intervention where if I forget, I didn't schedule it, I didn't put it in my calendar, I'm going to not have those objects, whether they're new or existing, replicated. So yeah, Marco, Ario, anything?
Yeah, yeah, Elsie, totally correct. What I find with this question is an audit finds that a company needs to replicate, and that kind of immediately pushes me towards S3 inventory. So I feel like A is a really good distractor question where it says, yep, use the inventory because you got an audit. But then it says use an inventory frequently. What does that mean? Like once a day, once a week? What's frequent for doing an inventory on your objects? We need to automate, right? So when you said, yeah, this kind of seems okay, but manual, I was like, oh yeah, the frequently is totally making it manual for sure.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Like more efficiency with S3 batch replications is right on the money. I'm right there with you.
Cool. Ario, do you want to take us through question 6?
Absolutely. Let's go through question 6, folks. Here it is. It's on the screen. Here is the select 2, not select 3. So maybe we don't skip this one, maybe not. But let's go for it. A company hosts a photography website on AWS that has global visitors. That's one of those key things that we want to pull out of this one, folks. Global visitors. The website has experienced steady increases in traffic during the last year, and users have reported a delay in displaying the images. So the data that we're dealing with are images, right? The company wants to configure CloudFront to deliver photos to visitors with minimal latency. Which actions will achieve this goal? This is one of those questions where you're going to select 2. Even before we look at the answer choices, again, let's look at the question and pull out those keywords here. Like we're dealing with images as data. We have global visitors, and we're trying to reduce the latency. So what can we do around that? Let's go ahead and inspect those answers. All right, so the first one that we have here is set the minimum time to live and the maximum time to live to 0 in the CloudFront distribution. So I'll just read them off and then we'll kind of decipher them. Set the minimum TTL, the time to live, and maximum time to live to a high value in the CloudFront distribution. So first and foremost, before we break down the other C through E, let's talk about these first 2 because they're kind of alike. So what I want to do is I want to, give folks a chance to get that data, right? I don't want to take that information away from my caching layer. So which one of these answer choices do you think will leave the data in the caching layer longest? Now, if I set a time to live to 0, that's not a whole lot of time for my data to live, right? So I want to set a higher value. That way, it's an image. Let's think about the data here, right? It isn't changing much. It doesn't frequently change. So I can expect that image to be the same for quite a while. If I set a high value to that time to live, I give those clients enough time to still get that, and it hasn't left that caching layer. So even before I read the next 3 answers here to choose the next one, I don't know about y'all folks, I'm gonna side with B, right? I'm going to side with B on my first answer choice. There's more that we can dive into here. Answer choice C says set the CloudFront distribution to forward all headers, all cookies, and all query strings to the origin. All right. So let me deal with this one for a moment. If I do that, I'm adding a few rules here, right? This possibly would go against the latency if that's the case, right? Because CloudFront has to evaluate those headers and those cookies and query strings that you might have added. So now I'm increasing the time instead of reducing the time. So I don't know if you agree with me, but I might just push this one off to the side, right? As a possible not the answer. Now let's look at answer choice E before we look at answer choice D. Select price class 100 on CloudFront distributions. You need to size yourself up against CloudFront and know the capabilities around CloudFront. Because when I set the price class to 100, I just get two areas around the world, right? I get America and Europe. But if you read the question here, it's indicating that we have global visitors. So if there are anybody who's in other countries out there, I just exclude them. And that's not the case for this company. We wouldn't want to set them up in this way, right? We want everybody to have access. So that leaves answer choice D for my selection, right? Set up additional origin servers that are geographically closer to the requester. But not only that, I'm going to bring Route 53 here to help me around latency. So yeah, I have these different origin servers, but depending on where you are as a client, you'll use one of those servers that should reduce the latency for you. So when I'm thinking about what will reduce latency or give that data quicker to the client, I'm going to side with answer choice B and D. For sure.
B and D, correct. Yeah. Correct. All right, let's jump into domain 3. And domain 3 is continuous improvement. What is continuous improvement? Well, it's ensuring that we're slowly and incrementally making a change, increasing security, increasing reliability and resilience, increasing performance, and decreasing cost. Cost increase should be a bad thing. So we're decreasing cost, we're increasing sustainability, we're following the pillars of the well-architected principles. And you'll find that a lot of the questions, if you're familiar with the well-architected approach, you'll see a lot of the questions are just going to be purely out of the well-architected book. So let's take a look at our first question, question number 7 here. A company runs an application on EC2 instances. The company currently deploys the applications manually, but the company requires an automated solution. To avoid faulty deployments that affect all customers, the company wants to evaluate production deployments before it makes the applications widely available. The company requires the capability to move traffic back to the previous version of the application if the new deployment does not meet certain criteria. Which solution will meet these requirements? This sounds like a developer question, doesn't it? Sounds a lot like a developer question. So yeah, with some of these questions, what we're going to see is the scope of an architect will overlap with the scope of a developer. And what I expect in the responses is some code services that'll help me with this capability. And yep, there it is, a bunch of code services. These are developers kind of services. Why are we seeing them on the Solutions Architect Pro exam? Because you're a pro, you're a professional. You are the trusted voice in the company that will be able to understand how these services work. And even if you don't totally understand how they work, you know the concepts enough to be able to pass this exam. And then you use that last second learning, the just-in-time learning approach with the resources that we shared to dive deeper when you get those questions. That's where we want you to be. Be an expert that knows more than just EC2 instances in a VPC. All right, let's take a look at the responses. A says, use code build to deploy the application. That's an option. We can deploy applications with code build. It's really cool. Use a canary deployment type. Canary obviously will allow us to utilize that little canary. One of the instances will become a canary, and we'll send some test traffic to it and see whether the application works correctly before we roll out the whole application. Now, can we use code build to deploy onto EC2? We can build the application. We can create artifacts. We need to, there's something missing. We need to pull those artifacts onto the instance and install them. So It's kind of a plausible, but not the best solution. B, use code deploy to deploy the application. That sounds right. That the word deploy and deploy, these match. Use an all-at-once deployment type. Ooh, I don't like an all-at-once deployment type. All-at-once deployment is just, fingers crossed, and let's pray this works. That's the all-at-once deployment. It's cheap, it's quick, you deploy everything at once, but if it fails, hey, not as easy to roll back as one might think. If it's a Word and an HTML document that you're changing, if you're changing 2024 to 2025 in your copyright statement in your website, then hey, all at once is fine. But if it's a full application install that takes 30 minutes, no. Amazon C, use Amazon Code Guru to deploy the application. Amazon Code Guru, what does this service do? It's a code inspection tool. It inspects the code, it takes a look at any vulnerabilities and things like that. So that's a non-feasible. I'll scratch that off the list. And then D, use code deploy to deploy the application and use a canary deployment type. We all determined canary is correct, and code deploy is the right service to deploy. So in this one, it's pretty easy. This is the kind of question that I would not flag. I would not skip. I just go and answer. Boom, D, 30 seconds. We are done. That will be the correct answer. For deployment types, canary, some of you are saying, what is canary? Canary comes from the old expression, a canary in a coal mine. Back in the day when we used to have manual coal mines, there would be a canary in a cage that miners would take into the cage. And if the CO levels started rising, the canary would be the first one to feel it, and it would start squeaking. It would start sounding the alarm. So the canary sounds the alarm for everybody to move out of that mining tunnel. So a canary deployment is similar to that. An application, let's say 1 instance out of 10 has the new version of the application. And if that instance starts squeaking, starts alarming, telling us, hey, something's wrong, then we have to roll back. We can't roll forward. We cannot deploy the application, a new version, to all of the other ones. It is a similar approach to blue-green, except for blue-green, instead of a canary, we have the blue application, our current application, and the green application, and then we shift the traffic to the green one, and we can observe the green one and see if it's got a canary-type response as well. So when you see canary and blue-green, canary is really just a subversion, subcategory of the blue-green principle of deployment. And the two types of deployments can be rolling, where we do one at once, one at a time, half at a time. We roll the deployment across all the instances. We roll the deployment. We gradually shift the traffic to the green application, or it can be all at once. The big bang moment where we just deploy version 2 everywhere right now. And again, fingers crossed.
Yeah, no, I love this. This is a great one. And to your fact, Marco, you're at the pro level. It's time to jump into your development bag just a bit. But looking at AWS Code Deploy, when you go into configure Code Deploy, the first thing you set up is what we call an application. And the application is really deployment configuration around, like, if you're deploying on EC2 and how you can make that deployment happen. So immediately, just like you said, Marco, when I read these questions, I'm like, all right, I'm building out application code with Code Build. I'm reviewing code with Code Guru. I am deploying with AWS Code Deploy, but I need to run a few tests because that matches what the scenario talked about. So yeah, in total agreement.
All right, cool. Question number 8, Elsie, you want to take us through question number 8?
Yeah, let's take a look at this company who's running containers on a large Amazon ECS cluster. This cluster contains identical Amazon EC2 instances, and the company has configured the associated security group to only allow HTTPS traffic inbound on port 443 because of a strict internal company regulation. Now, the security team needs the ability to make critical operating system changes across all the instances which solution would provide the required access, again, capital, least ongoing operational overhead. So those are our keywords, least ongoing operational overhead. All right, let's take a look at some of these answer options here. We're going to take a look at option A, temporarily update the security group to allow inbound SSH access on port 22. Now I'm going to stop right here. Marco, Aria, what do you think about just that first sentence?
Yeah, temporarily. I don't like the word temporarily. Anytime you do something temporarily, that becomes permanent. So it's a really big no. So yeah. Also, it's SSH. Just let's allow SSH. There are
There's
better
much
ways
better
to do
ways
this
to
on AWS.
I would say there's much better ways to connect than opening up port 22, a no-go when you consider security here.
Absolutely. I'll stop right there talking about exam strategies. I'm going to eliminate this right off the bat. It's manual. I have to remember to do something, especially on something like port 22. So I'm going to stop right there. If we take a look at option B, the same thing is going to occur. We're going to allow SSH access only on the network access control list instead. I'd say this is even worse because it's at the subnet level. So anything in that subnet, it's going to be impacted versus the security group that's attached to directly the network interface. But again, eliminating A and B right off the bat, we know that AWS suggests alternatives to connect to your instance, to your container, without opening that port 22 up. In fact, we even have security services like Inspector, GuardDuty that are routinely scanning if you open up that port 22. So we'll do no-go on A and B. Let's take a look at C and D, which I see the chat has now filled up with option C. Configure the systems manager agent on those EC2 instances and configure an IAM role to allow the security team to use session manager. All right, so this is the alternative to temporarily and manually opening up port 22 SSH access. This is the way that if you again read the AWS documentation, you can allow access to connect to your servers. And this is actually going to be connecting on port 443. The answer options don't mention it, but this is what it's using as an alternative. And this is why it's considered a more secure way. Now, we're going to use that to use a session manager, which is part of systems manager, the service, and that's how we're connecting to the instances. Okay, I can see that. I mean, we're familiar with that. We can connect securely. This is the suggested way. Let's hold option C for now. And what is the difference between D? So it looks like the difference between D is that the IAM role is used to run a systems manager run command to apply changes to the instances. All right, this seems to directly address what the question is asking. The security team needs to make these critical operating system changes across all the instances. Now, it doesn't give us a number. All could mean 5. It could mean 500, 5,000. We don't know. And so if I compare option C, where I'm connecting to the instance directly, maybe if it's 5, okay, we can do that. Not a major issue. But if we scale, if we're talking about scaling, we're talking about well architecting solutions. This is not a scalable solution, option C. We need to manually connect to all those instances, apply the changes. And again, it's something that we're doing manually. So what happens if we, run the wrong script or something doesn't apply correctly and it fails? Do we have something that will alert us that the change has failed? Option C does not give us any of that. And so if you haven't used run commands before, there are automation documents, there's scripts that you can run, and you can apply them to all the instances. Now, we can do this in a variety of ways. You can literally, select the box for each of these instances. We can apply tags to the instances. So we'll say all the tags that have, something like production. or maybe we're running an application, let's say, I don't know, application 1, anything labeled with that will be updated. So there's a variety of ways that we can run these run commands, these documents that allow us to run a series of commands or a script that will run that for us. And we can do this in a variety of languages. If you're familiar with Bash scripts, if you want to write something in Python, you can create these, or you can use the existing AWS documents. So the additional managed format to that is that it has some pre-configured solutions. So if you want to maybe modify a security group, you can do that with the existing AWS document. You don't have to create your own. But yes, I like option D because it allows us to make changes all at once. We're using a role to securely allow access. We're not creating like additional accounts, additional credentials that are going to be lingering around. So yeah, looks like option D here is the answer. Looks like the chat was convinced from C to D now. Anything you want to add, Marco, Ario?
Yeah, the response is C and D. They're actually the same technology. If you think about it, what Session Manager does is it opens up a session with your instance, and you can now type in commands. Run command actually does in the background the same exact thing. It opens up a session, but then it just sends the command to the instance, runs it, and then shuts off the session. So basically what you're doing with the run command is you're automating what Session Manager gives you for one instance across large amounts of instances. So those of you who are thinking C, because you're familiar with the capabilities of the Session Manager, well, run command is actually just an automation capability on top of the same type of capability that Session Manager works in.
Agreed.
Cool. All right, Ariel, question 9.
Question number 9. All right, let's do it, folks. By the way, this question reminds me of question 6 a little bit, but a company with customers around the globe, right, runs a large 3-tier Java web application. That's going to be a big one that we need to focus in on this question. On AWS, the developers cannot recreate the application in any other programming language. So this Java web application, that's it. They can't re-architect this into anything else. Most web pages have content that changes frequently. So frequent changes are happening. The web page retrieves the content from the database tier. Recently, a key performance indicator showed that the time to load the pages has increased and the customer base has grown. More customers, more increased time, not good. Which solution will decrease the load times the most? All right, let's look through this thing. Now, first and foremost, let's inspect the question and let's look at the programming language that we have to use. Now let's consider answer choice A, right? Create an Amazon CloudFront Lambda at edge function to cache the data locally at edge locations. I'm usually using Python with Lambda at edge or Node.js, but with this Java web application, that kind of rules out for me to use Lambda at edge. Only one that I can kind of rule out here when I consider that concept. Now let's go to the bottom, all right? Let's hit the last answer choice here. Create a function in Amazon CloudFront functions to cache the data locally at edge locations. CloudFront functions doesn't work well with local caching at edge locations, right? And let's talk about answer choice C to kind of help that out a little bit. Create an Amazon Elasticache for Mcache clusters. Use a write-through caching strategy to update the data. All right, so with this one, we got to go back into the the question itself and consider frequent changes. So caching at this point is really not the best bet. So when I look at answer choice B, configure an Amazon CloudFront web distribution, configure query string forwarding, set the cache behavior maximum time to live instead of a maximum down to 0. Why? Because that database has some data that is frequently changing, and we got to make sure that we get whatever is live, right? So when I consider these answer choices, I'm definitely going to side with answer choice B. Right? That's what I'm going for.
And you're correct, Ariel. You're correct. And this is a really uncommon use of a content delivery network. Typically, we're caching at the CloudFront distribution, and here we're putting the TTL to 0. What are we actually doing? We're actually only establishing the connection between the front end and the user at the closest, at the cone of the traffic, at over 500 edge locations that we have now across the globe. And that then allows for all the traffic to the back end to flow through the AWS backbone, the big fiber, the huge OC196 fiber that we have everywhere around the globe that has such massive capacity. You could literally drive a truck through the actual fiber. It's insane. And this is where we're at right now. We can't change the application. We can't use any function like Lambda at edge because it's Java. We wouldn't benefit from a Memcache cluster. Like you said, it's frequently changing. I want the freshest information. The Memcache cluster might help with like anything that's not frequently changing to decrease latency. And at the end of the bottom, answer D, like caching data locally, that would be even worse. Frequently changes, it doesn't work. So we can't use caching. TTL to 0 if you can't use caching, and then utilize the architecture, the infrastructure, the design of CloudFront sitting right next to the user and then sending all the data through a huge pipe on the Amazon backbone. That's the design that we have here. Okay, that brings us into domain 4. And domain 4, 20%, workload migration and modernization. So here we're going to see a lot of emphasis on the migration tools, a lot of emphasis on how to get the data into the cloud as fast as possible. A lot of perhaps old designs of applications running on some exotic system and then trying to move it and make a application that fits inside of AWS. And this question outlines that specific problem really well. A company wants to decommission its existing on-premises data center. A company has a highly customized legacy Objective-C application. Ooh, that's like what I saw back in the 2000s when I was working at IBM. They have an IBM Informix database. Well, that's a little newer, but still, ooh, exotic. They've got a fleet of physical servers, physical Windows servers, even worse. Servers and Windows servers, two different categories for me. Well, Linux all the way. The company wants to move its existing infrastructure to AWS. A solutions architect needs to migrate the company's resources to AWS as quickly as possible. Speed is the fastest, the biggest question here. And the actual ask is, which solution will meet these requirements with the least migration effort? Least migration effort, oh my goodness. What is that? If we look at our 7 R's, what is the least migration effort as quickly as possible? Elsie, Ario, I know you know this one.
I'm just going to retire that.
That's a good one. Yeah, rehost definitely, in my opinion. Lift and shift, just boom. That's probably the best solution there. So what's the service for migrations? Well, if we're doing lift and shifts, the AWS Application Migration Service, it shouldn't say Cloud Endure anymore. It should say AWS MGN. That's a mistake in our slides. My sincere apologies. I was overviewing all of this, and I missed this one. AWS MGN is what it would say. Use that to lift and shift and rehost the existing application to and database to Amazon EC2 instances. This is the same in A and B, right? This is same in A and B. I think MGN is the right service. Application Migration Service is the right service to perform this migration. We'll see what the next sentence says. Refactor the application to a Docker-based container. Well, this is something that I would definitely advocate for if I was the architect. I would say, hey, let's just Dockerize it. Let's spin it up in the cloud. Let's make it super easy. Run it on ECS. It's going to be super manageable and scalable in the future because you can put anything. You can make up your own. I could make up Marco script and write my application in Marco script, right? With a bunch of emojis and arrows. drop that code onto a container and Docker would run it. And that's a possible scenario, but least migration effort. So I got to eliminate C because of least migration effort. Package the application to Elastic Beanstalk. Well, Objective-C or Informix is not going to work on Elastic Beanstalk. Elastic Beanstalk has a known list of languages it supports, Python, Java, .NET, but it also supports like web languages, things like PHP. You wouldn't expect that to be supported, but PHP, for example, really good use case for migrating PHP applications to Elastic Beanstalk, Go, JavaScript, all this, Node.js, all of those cool languages for new web-based applications are an option. So that's why I'm eliminating D as well. Now, let's see what the second portion of A and B is. Install the AWS replication agents on the source server, configure application migration service by using the replication agent. And the other one is configure application migration service by using agentless snapshot-based replication. These are two capabilities of the NGN. You can do agent or agentless. Agent can connect to a specific API, one specific API of one specific virtualization platform, and scan your instances and pull them into the cloud. So if you're running virtual machines on VMware, you can use agentless with NGN, and you can just siphon off the machines and drop them into EC2. However, if you're running on physical servers, physical Windows servers like this company is, the only way to do it is to use the replication agent and replicate the application and the database to EC2 instances, because what are EC2 instances? Well, there is just either Linux or Windows servers, and anything you have running on Linux or Windows on premises, you can run on Windows or Linux on EC2. I'm going to go for response A, which is the correct response here. Elsie, what do you think about this one?
I mean, originally I said retire, but again, the question is not asking that. Yeah, least migration effort. Ideally, we would want to make sure if this was domain 2, what is it, designing, or domain 3, operationally efficient solutions, designing new solutions. But unfortunately, we're not doing that. So again, know your services, know the capabilities of this application migration service. You might not have the experience of being involved in a scenario like this, but again, reading the documentation, looking at tutorials, examples, you'll be able to know that, again, that agentless snapshot replication is currently supported by VMware. And again, the question would not be giving us this information if they didn't want us to use it. So Windows servers, legacy Objective-C application. Yeah. Anything, Ario?
I think you hit it right on the money, right? And anything that I would say would just kind of duplicate what you said. I mean, you got to look at the question, folks. You got to size yourself up with what the question is actually asking you. So great job.
Yeah, and I love the comment from Robert Tables. I say unplug it at the data center and wait for someone to yell. This is what will happen with some of these applications that usually reside in our data centers. Some of them are running because the data center, it doesn't really cost us. We don't see the direct impact, the direct cost of running an old application, and a lot of these will be running. All right, that brings us into question 11. Elsie, take it away.
All right, let's try to get this. A company has the on-premise MongoDB cluster with many databases that the company updates regularly. Okay, I see some information already that might be useful. And we want to migrate to AWS to eliminate that on-premises server fleet. We want to use managed services on AWS to eliminate server management. Okay, I really like this question. It's giving me very clear keywords. The existing databases and applications must remain available during this migration period. Which solution will meet these requirements? Okay, let's take a look at some of these options here. And right off the bat, we have Amazon Document DB with MongoDB compatibility cluster. All right, good solution. We're going to use the database migration service, that is DMS, to perform the full load of data on the on-premises MongoDB cluster. When the data load is finished, update the application to point to the new document DB cluster endpoint. Okay, I see this. It looks like a pretty reasonable option here, but let's take a look at some of the other ones here. Option B is pretty similar. We're going to use DMS, that document DB cluster. And the only difference is, like Marco is highlighting, activate change data capture CDC mode to replicate source changes. After the data is synchronized, update the application to point to that cluster endpoint. Now, this is very important because the question is directly telling us that we need to remain available. And so if we're going to initiate the migration with DMS, the data is being transferred at some point, there's a cutoff. And then this company is changing regularly. There's pushing out updates regularly. And so we want to capture any of that data that occurs after this cutoff point. So I think I like option B better than option A for now. So I'm going to hold off on A and select B. Okay. What about option C and D? Now we're going to do that application migration service, do the lift and shift to from on-premise servers to EC2 instances. Again, I'm going to stop right here. I don't need to go any further. The question told us we want to use manage services to eliminate server management, and EC2, I'm going to be able to manage those on my own. In fact, it's my responsibility. So we'll stop there. No option C. And then option D tells us we're going to use the same thing. We're going to use DMS, full load. And then the only difference is here, I'm seeing the schema conversion tool to convert from MongoDB. Again, know your features, know your services. DocumentDB does have MongoDB compatibility, and the question highlights it there. This response is highlighted right there. So why am I using the schema conversion tool? Usually that is used when we look at migrations. We have homogeneous migrations where we have the same database. We're just going to be doing a lift and shift to the same type of database on the cloud. With heterogeneous migrations, we may be using different database that are supported. So they might have different schemas. The data may not translate directly, so might need changes. And in that case, the schema conversion tool will assist with that. In this case, it doesn't seem to me that we needed Marco Ario. What do you think?
Man, what an excellent breakdown, right? Everything from capturing the data all the way to not managing servers. You hit it right on the money.
Yeah. Schema conversion tool really only for heterogeneous migrations. DMS supports DynamoDB, DocumentDB, Mongo migrations natively, so no need for that. And CDC, the change data capture is key because we want to remain available. Yeah, totally agree. B is the correct answer. And now, since we are coming close to the end, we're going to dedicate a few more minutes to question 12. Ario, take it away for the last one.
All right, last one. Let's try to get through this one, folks. A little bit of time left. A company runs a highly available Oracle Real Application Cluster, right? RAC with Oracle. Database on premises. The database supports write-intensive applications. Here's the important part. And several read-only applications, all right? So let's focus on that. The company identifies a performance bottleneck in the read-only applications that is difficult to resolve with the company's current infrastructure. So the current infrastructure isn't working well, all right? The company wants to move the database to AWS and address the read performance bottleneck. Which solution meets these requirements with the least application change? Of course, let's go through the answers. Answer choice A says we can create a fleet of EC2 instances that use a Linux image with Oracle installed to match the on-premises configuration on AWS. Use DMS, the database migration service, to migrate the on-premises database to the Oracle database on a fleet of EC2 instances. Redirect the application to the EC2 instance cluster after migration is complete. Now, that sounds a lot like what they already got going on. Right? So it's almost like you were talking about earlier, Marco, a lift and shift, right? So it doesn't solve an issue. Yeah, you're here at AWS, but your problem's still the same. You got to read only bottleneck here, right? All right, let's read the second one here. Answer choice B says create an RDS for Oracle database instance with multi-AZ deployment Use the AWS database migration service to migrate the database to the new database instance. After the migration is complete, direct the write application to the primary database and direct the read-only applications to the standby database. Here's the thing about a standby database. It's only there in case your primary database goes down, the one that you're writing to. So I'm not utilizing that standby database for reads. So I'm definitely like ruling this out. This is not the one. I'm going to go to answer choice D. I'm going to read answer choice D, right? Create an Amazon DynamoDB global tables to support multi-region replication. It sounds good. Use the AWS database migration service to migrate the database to DynamoDB. That doesn't sound good. Why? Because we use Oracle RAC, and that's a relational database. And I'm not trying to spend all of that time configuring something to be a non-relational database now, right? That's not the least application change. That's a lot going on. That leads me to answer choice C. Create an Amazon Aurora database cluster with read replicas. By the way, if you've already taken the Solution Architect Associate, before you hit this Pro, you're probably already going through the fact that Aurora gives you so many more read replicas that you can utilize. Now I can use the schema conversion tool to now convert Oracle into Aurora PostgreSQL compatible edition, right? Use the database migration service to migrate the data to the new database cluster. After migration is complete, direct the write application to the primary database, direct the read-only application to all those read replicas that you can dive into with Aurora now. So I don't know about y'all in chat, but I'm with answer choice C for sure.
Answer choice C. Yes, 100%. And it's not just a bunch of replicas. It's 15 replicas to every primary for every region. And you can have up to 90 instances altogether across all regions if you do a multi-regional cluster, right? Mind-blowingly high performance compared to their current infrastructure. The current infrastructure is the problem here. So we got to modernize. And this is part of domain 4, modernize. Right, Elsie?
Instead of retiring, okay.
Yeah, you probably won't find retire on any of these questions. Very likely, nobody is going to say, yeah, we got this application. What do you want to do? Oh, retain or retire. No, that's not going to be the options. For migrations, always look at if you need speed, it's lift and shift. If you need to use managed services, like we had in the previous question, it's all about using the right managed service. Like if it's MongoDB on premises and you've got DocumentDB right there, then the easiest thing is just to use the database migration service and push everything to DocumentDB. And if it's something more complex, where it's an infrastructure current problem that we cannot resolve with the current infrastructure, then lift and shift makes no sense. Then I have to go and I have to refactor the application. I have to push it onto the right most performant database, right? Most performant database here. Although putting it into RDS Oracle DB instance would be least changes for the application, it wouldn't solve the current infrastructure problem. It wouldn't solve the current infrastructure problem. So you could have like a requirement for least application changes, but you still need to solve the problem. You can't just say, oh, least application changes, yep, B is the correct answer. Definitely not. So make sure you comply with the stem, the question, and everything that's in there, right? This is the kind of catch that could mean, win or lose on this kind of certification.
Yeah, that's definitely make or break right there when you have to read the entire question and make sure that you consider everything. Absolutely.
Yeah, especially because, again, this is 75 questions over 3 hours. And what we've been doing during this 2-hour stream is we keep going back to the question, right? Keep going back. There's information there. It wouldn't be there if it wasn't needed. And we need to use it as a reference. So every time you read a response, go back to the question.
Totally. All right, everybody, what have we learned in this one so far? Well, take care of, just be conscious of your time, be conscious of the fact that you do have very limited time per question. If you see easy questions, answer them, move on. If you see difficult ones, long ones, select 3, go the Marco the king of the flags, flag the question. That's my way. You go to the end, you'll see in the exam, you can review flagged questions, focus on the flagged questions, review those, leave the ones that you can't answer flagged, and you go again and again if you have to. Make sure to use your time really, really well. Be prepared to sit for 3 hours. Your biological needs need to be fully settled before you start that exam. That is another exam tip. Another exam tip. And make sure to follow Ariel, Elsie, and myself on LinkedIn, because we have tons more advice that we share almost every day. All right. Thank you, Elsie, for joining me here. Thank you, Ariel, for joining me. It's been my pleasure. Thanks, everybody who attended this one. You all had so many correct responses. I was really amazed. Pretty much half the people, 3/4 of the people that are responding correctly or are falling for that catch, like the B question in the one before, where it was least application changes, but we didn't comply with the performance issue that we were trying to solve. So I think you all are ready. You got this. Go, sign up. Sign up, everybody.
Oh yeah, I think we got more ones than they let on a little bit as far as who's going to go ahead and sign up for the exam and register.
Yeah, I think we had experts in the chat. Pretty much every question, we got a good majority of the correct answer.
All right. Thank you, everybody. It was an amazing time. Hope to see you again. Bye.